Welcome back to Cash and Sass, the podcast where we ditch the shame, talk real numbers, and build bold, bankable wealth without sacrificing who we are. I'm your host, Lisa Marie, fractional CFO, wealth mentor, and the sassy wealth queen behind Transcendent Wealth Co. If you're ready to scale with strategy, own your power, and finally feel wealthy in every sense of the word, you're in the right place. Today, we're going somewhere a little deeper and a little more personal, if I'm honest. We're talking about the money story you didn't choose, the one that was handed to you before you were old enough to question it, before you ever had your own bank account, before you ever made your first dollar. This episode is called You Didn't Choose Your First Money Story, but You Can Choose Your Next One. And if you've ever wondered why you still react to money the way you do, even after everything you've built, then this conversation is going to give you some real answers. All right, let's get into it. So most of us think our money beliefs came from books or school or from some formal financial education. They didn't. Your first money education came at the kitchen table, backseat of a car, during a conversation you weren't supposed to hear, in the tension between two adults who were trying to figure out how to make it meet to the end of the month, or from just anywhere in society. It came from watching, from listening, from absorbing. And here's what's wild about that. You weren't evaluating what you saw. You weren't fact checking it. You were a child, and your brain was doing what every child's brain does. It was filling it all away as truth. So we're absorbing all this information, right? The information was telling us money causes arguments, filed. We can't afford that, filed. Rich people are greedy, filed. We don't talk about money, filed. You have to work yourself to the bone just to survive, filed. And those files, they didn't get deleted when you grew up and started your business. They became your default operating system, the background program that runs whether you're aware of it or not. That's what I want us to look at today. Okay, I'm going to get personal with you for a minute, okay? I don't talk about this to get sympathy. I talk about it because I know someone listening right now needs to hear that where you started or where you're at does not determine where you're going. I grew up with a single mom who worked hard, did everything she could to keep us afloat, and I love her for that. But the message I absorbed about money from a young age was very clear. There's never enough. We're always broke. We can't afford that. I was told, and I mean told directly from many people in my society, that the way you got real money was to come from it or marry into it. And if neither of those were your story, then you worked. You came home, you paid your bills, you went to sleep, and you did it all over again the next day until you retired. That was just how it is. I carried that story with me all the way into adulthood, all the way into motherhood. And I know what it is to sit at a kitchen table and have to choose between putting food on the table for your kids or paying a bill. I know what it's like to look at two bills and decide which one I'm going to pay this month and which one we're going to put off till next month because it wasn't enough money to get it through. And you hoped for the best. And then you did the same thing the next month, the month that the bills that you skipped, you paid, and then you choose to skip another one. I know what it's like to be on food stamps. I was on food stamps when I started my business because I had just been let go from my corporate job. And I made the decision not to go back because I was barely making ends meet. I had been through 2 foreclosures in my many years, along with a short sale, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and I had stared down the kind of a financial rock bottom that makes you question everything. Corporate job that I'd been at for 10 years was supposed to be my career. It was supposed to help me flourish and have the things I wanted. And instead, I was stressed, migraines, tension headaches, miserable. It made me question everything. It makes you question everything, your decisions, your worth, your future. And I decided that I was going to start building anyway. building that business, not because I had it all figured out, far from it, not because the fear was gone, anything but because that story, the one that said this is just how it is for people like us, I was done living it. Y'all, within 3 years of starting that business, I had taken it to multi-six figures. Now let that sink in for a second. Food stamps, 2 foreclosures, short sale, Chapter 7 bankruptcy, all before I turned 40. I started my business when I was 43 just for conceptual issues, and having to choose between groceries and bills to multi-six figures in 3 years. This is not because I got lucky. It's not because someone handed me anything, but because I did the work to see the story I had inherited, decide it was not mine to keep, and build something entirely different in its place. Now, I want to be honest with you. The external success came, but so did the internal work. Because even as the money grew, I had to keep catching myself, keep noticing when the old story was trying to creep back in. I was making good money and I was still spending it like it was going to disappear because I still had that fear. I was building a business and still bracing for it to all fall apart. I was helping other women with their finances while my own nervous system was still wired for survival. Because the story doesn't just disappear when your bank account changes. You have to consciously choose to leave it behind again and again and again. And that is exactly what I want to talk about today, because that story came with me for years. And if I hadn't done the work to see it, to name it, and consciously choose something different, it would still be running my life right now. Maybe yours is too. Okay. Before you can rewrite your story, you have to know what story you're actually telling. So I want you to think back, not in a painful way, just in an honest way, like just observing, okay? What did money look like in your home growing up? Was it something people fought about? Was it something nobody ever discussed? Was it always scarce, always tight, always a source of stress? Or maybe it was there, but it came with conditions. You only deserved it if you worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, suffered enough. What did the adults around you believe about money? And here's the harder question. How many of those beliefs are you still carrying right now? Because here's what generational money patterns do. They don't just affect how you think about money. They affect how you price your offers, how you receive payment, whether you feel worthy of being well compensated, whether you self-sabotage right before a breakthrough. Y'all, cultural shame around money is real. Even in today's society, it's even more real. If you grew up in a community where wanting more was seen as selfish, greedy, or forgetting where you came from, that doesn't just disappear because you launched a business or because you all of a sudden came into money. It shows up as guilt every single time you raise your rates. It shows up as over-delivering without charging for it. It shows up as giving discounts you can't afford to people who never asked for one. That's not generosity. That's an inherited story that hasn't been examined yet. All right, let's talk about what you can actually do with all of this, okay? Because awareness without action is just honestly an interesting conversation, and we don't do that. Not here anyway. Okay, so step 1, write down the money beliefs you grew up with. Actual pen and paper. Don't type this one, okay? So I'm going to give you some sentences. Finish these sentences without overthinking it. Money is. Rich people are. I grew up believing that. In my family, money meant. Now, whatever comes up, write it down. No editing, no filtering, just let it out. What you'll find on that page is your inherited narrative. That's the operating system that's been running in the background, and you cannot change what you cannot see. So I cannot stress the importance of being honest with yourself when you do this. Okay, again, You do it as an observation, but be honest. Step 2, I want you to hold each belief up to the light and ask, is this actually true or is this inherited? Not every belief you were handed is wrong, okay? Some of them served someone at some point. Some of them may have actually served you at some point. I know they've served me at some point. But are they serving you now is the question. Are they moving you toward wealth or keeping you from it? And for me, recently, I realized some of them were keeping me from it. So again, even going into 10 years into business, they still go. Do you see what I'm saying? The money stories are still going to be there. It's still work. Okay. This is not about blaming your parents or your culture or your upbringing. This is about taking ownership of what you carry forward. Okay. You didn't choose your first money story, but you are choosing whether to keep living it. You get to decide. Your third step, answer this question and answer it honestly. If I could write any money story starting today, what would it be? And y'all, I've done this recently, and actually I'm going to be doing it again. Not the story that feels realistic right now, not the story that makes sense based on where you've been or where you're currently at. The story you actually want. What does your relationship with money look like in that story? How do you feel when you look at your numbers? How do you make decisions? How do you receive wealth? How do you receive money? What do you believe about what's possible for you? Write all that down, because that is your chosen narrative, and every decision you make from this point forward is either moving you toward it or pulling you back toward the old one. That's the work. That's the shift. Now, here's what I know after years of doing this work with women entrepreneurs. The awareness piece, the stuff we just talked about, is powerful. Y'all, but awareness alone doesn't change your bank account. It doesn't restructure your cash flow. It doesn't help you make decisions from strategy instead of from a 10-year-old money wound. That's where I come in. In my 2-week Money Moves Voxer Coaching, we go deep and we go practical. You get direct, personalized access to me through Voxer for 2 full weeks. We look at your numbers together. We look at your patterns together. We identify exactly where your inherited story is showing up as a profit leak in your business right now. And then we build the path forward, your path, based on where you are and where you're actually trying to go, aligned with your values and your goals. So this is no cookie cutter thing, okay? This is not group coaching. This is not a course. This is me in your corner, helping you bridge the gap between the money story you inherited and the one you're ready to live. So if today's episode cracked something open for you, don't let that feeling pass without doing something with it. The link is in the show notes. Go check it out, okay? Because your next chapter deserves to be written by you, not by anybody else. Until next time, remember, confidence and cash are the ultimate power duo. Go check in with your money, and as always, have a fantastic and wealthy day.